It's dawn, somewhere in the Rift Valley, and a man is walking. He's been walking since before the sun cleared the acacia trees. He's carrying a bough made from a single branch, and he hasn't eaten yet today. By the time the sun sets, he will have covered somewhere between 8 and 15 miles on foot, dug through packed dirt with a wooden stick, climbed a tree to rob a beehive with his bare hands, and possibly sprinted flat out after an animal that does not want to die. He will do this again tomorrow, and the day after that. He has never once, in his entire life, worked out. Not once. No gym. No fitness app buzzing on his wrist. No leg day. No rest day either, because there is no such concept as a day off from being a human being who needs to eat. And here is the part that should make you sit up. When scientists finally strapped monitors onto people who live exactly like this today, measuring every calorie their bodies actually burned, they expected to find a metabolic furnace. A population of superhuman calorie tortures, built by a life of non-stop physical effort. What they found instead broke something scientists thought they understood about the human body for over half a century. And it's about to break something you believe about your own. You've been told a story since childhood, and it's such a comfortable story that nobody ever questions it. The story goes like this: our ancestors were lean, strong, and tireless because they moved constantly, and we are soft and sick because we don't. Fix the input, the story says. Move more like they did, and your body will respond like theirs did. It's the entire foundation of the fitness industry, the entire premise behind your smartwatch, the moral logic behind every guilt-inducing, close your rings notification buzzing in your pocket right now. Move equals burn equals health. Simple, obvious, practically self-evident. But here's what researchers actually found when they went and tested it on real human beings who still live the ancestral way. And it should terrify anyone who has ever bought a gym membership hoping it would fix everything. His name doesn't matter for this story, but let's call him what the researchers who study his people quietly do in the field: a walking anomaly. He belongs to the Hadza, one of the last populations on Earth who still get almost all of their food by hunting and gathering, the same way every human on the planet did for roughly 300,000 years before someone somewhere decided to plant a seed instead of chasing a gazelle. For the Hadza, hunger is not a diet plan. It's the daily condition of being alive. And that daily condition demands more physical output in a single morning than most office workers produce in a week. So when a team of anthropologists led by a researcher who has spent his career studying human energy expenditure decided to actually measure how many calories Hadza adults were burning, using a gold standard method involving doubly labeled water, a technique so precise it can track calorie burn down to the molecule over a period of days, the entire scientific field expected a landslide result. More movement should mean more calories burned. That's thermodynamics. That's supposed to be math you can't argue with. Except the math argued back. The Hadza, despite walking for miles daily, climbing trees, digging, chasing prey, carrying loads across brutal terrain under an equatorial sun, were burning almost the exact same number of total daily calories as a sedentary adult living in Minnesota who drives to work, sits at a desk for 8 hours, and drives home to sit on a couch. Same age, same body size, same total energy expenditure. Not close. Not roughly similar. Statistically, once you adjusted for body size, nearly identical. Read that again because it should not make sense. A population performing what amounts to an all-day physical labor shift, every single day of their lives, was not burning more total energy than people whose most strenuous daily act is climbing a flight of stairs. If movement simply adds calories burned on top of everything else your body already does, like a car burning more gas the harder you press the pedal, this result is impossible. And yet there it was, published, replicated, sitting in the data like a landmine nobody wanted to step on. This is the moment the entire fitness industrial complex should have paused. Didn't, but you should. Because if physical activity doesn't simply add calories burned on top of your baseline, then what is your body actually doing with all that extra movement? Where does the energy go if not into the number ticking upward on your smartwatch? The answer that emerged is stranger, and far more consequential, than anything a treadmill display has ever told you. Your body isn't a simple machine that burns more fuel the harder you work it. It's something closer to a company with a fixed, non-negotiable budget. And when one department starts spending more, the accountants start quietly cutting checks somewhere else. This is called the constrained energy expenditure model, and once you understand it, you will never look at a calorie counter the same way again. The idea is this: your body, over the course of evolutionary time, developed a kind of internal budget cap on total daily energy output. Below a certain threshold of activity, yes, moving more burns more. That matches what you'd expect. But above that threshold, and the Hadza live permanently above that threshold, your body stops letting total expenditure rise. Instead, it starts reallocating. It pulls funding from other departments to pay for the movement without changing the bottom line. Which departments, exactly? This is where it stops being a curiosity and starts being personal. Immune function is one of the first to take a cut. Stress hormone regulation is another. Reproductive hormone production, testosterone, estrogen, the entire cascade tied to fertility gets throttled. Inflammation regulation, tissue repair, even the basic maintenance processes that keep your cells from degrading faster than they should, all become subject to budget cuts the moment your physical output crosses that ceiling. Your body isn't rewarding relentless movement with a bigger furnace. It's protecting a fixed furnace by quietly defunding everything it decides you can survive without in the short term. Now hold that thought, because it's about to collide head-on with your actual life. Somewhere on your phone right now there's a number: steps taken, calories burned, rings closed, minutes of exercise logged. That number was designed by people who assumed the old simple story was true, the one where more movement always equals more burn, in a straight, predictable, additive line. Multiple studies tracking fitness trackers against actual doubly labeled water measurements have found the devices can be off by staggering margins, sometimes overestimating calorie burn by well over 20%. You've been trusting a number on your wrist that was built on a model of the human body that the Hadza just quietly disproved. But this isn't really a story about step counts. It's a story about what healthy actually meant for 300,000 years, and how violently that definition has been rewritten in the last 200. Because here's the part almost nobody says out loud. The Hadza aren't unusually athletic by ancestral standards. They're not special. They're not genetically gifted endurance machines. Every population of hunter-gatherers ever studied with modern metabolic tools, from the Amazon to the Arctic, shows some version of the same constrained pattern. This wasn't a Hadza adaptation. This is baseline human biology, running the exact same operating system it's run since before agriculture, before cities, before anyone had ever imagined a room full of machines you pay money to sweat in. Which means the ancient human body was never optimized to get more calorie burn out of exercise. It was optimized for something almost the opposite: to survive on a tightly capped energy budget in an environment where food was never guaranteed, where a single bad week of hunting could mean starvation, and where a body that let calorie expenditure spiral upward with every extra mile walked would have simply died out, outcompeted by bodies that knew how to economize. Evolution didn't build an engine that rewards effort with output. It built a vault that protects itself from effort, and that reframes everything you thought you knew about working out as a concept. The modern gym isn't restoring some ancient natural state. It's asking a Stone Age energy budgeting system to respond to a problem it was never designed to solve. Sitting still for 10 hours and then trying to compress a day's worth of movement into 45 minutes on a machine that goes nowhere. Think about your own week for a second. Monday you skip movement entirely, a full day at a desk, a car seat, a couch. Tuesday you try to make up for it with an hour-long session designed to spike your heart rate and leave you drenched. Your body doesn't experience that as balance. It experiences it as an economic shock. A sudden, unpredictable demand on a budget that evolved to expect steady, moderate, all-day physical activity, rather than a single violent hour sandwiched between 9 hours of stillness. You are, biologically speaking, asking a system built for a marathon to sprint. This is modern connection number 1, and it's sitting in your pocket right now. The fitness tracker on your wrist was engineered around an assumption the Hadza data quietly demolished: that calories burned scale up in a clean, linear relationship with how hard you move. It doesn't. Which means the number telling you that you earned that extra slice of pizza after your workout is very likely lying to you. Not because the device is broken, but because the underlying model of the human body it was built on was already wrong before the first line of code was written. Here's modern connection number 2, and it's uglier. If your body has a fixed energy budget and defends it by cutting funding to reproduction, immune defense, and stress regulation whenever physical output spikes too high without enough recovery or fuel, then chronic overtraining isn't just risking a pulled muscle. It's quietly defunding the systems keeping you from getting sick, from healing properly, from regulating cortisol, from maintaining hormonal balance. Elite endurance athletes have shown documented suppression of immune markers and reproductive hormones during periods of extreme training load, a phenomenon researchers call relative energy deficiency in sport, and it doesn't just apply to Olympians. It applies to the person doing 6 intense workouts a week while eating like they still sit at a desk all day, because their body doesn't know the difference between training for a marathon and the tribe's grain store just ran empty. Ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you moved your body for a sustained, gentle, unremarkable period, the way that man in the Rift Valley moved his? Not a workout, not a class, not a session with a start time and an end time and a calorie tally waiting at the finish line. Just movement, woven into the fabric of an ordinary day, without ceremony. Chances are, the honest answer is rarely or never. And that gap, the space between constant low-grade movement and rare, intense, isolated exertion, might be the single most dangerous blind spot in how the modern world understands health. Because here's where the story gets darker. It's not simply that exercise doesn't burn as much extra fuel as you think. It's that the entire modern lifestyle has managed to combine the worst possible version of both worlds. We sit for longer, uninterrupted stretches than any hunter-gatherer population in the historical or archaeological record, sometimes 10, 12 hours a day between waking and sleeping. Then we compress our movement into short, intense bursts that spike stress hormones without providing the kind of gentle, sustained, low-intensity activity the human energy budgeting system actually evolved around. It's the metabolic equivalent of starving yourself for 6 days and binge eating on the 7th, except instead of food, the currency is physical output. Now picture the researchers reviewing this data for the first time. This wasn't a small study. It pulled together doubly labeled water measurements from populations spanning 6 continents, from foragers in Tanzania to farmers in Bolivia to office workers in Los Angeles. And it kept returning the same unsettling pattern. Total energy expenditure didn't climb in a straight line with physical activity level the way everyone assumed. Instead, it flattened, plateaued, as if the human body had installed an invisible ceiling, and no amount of extra walking, digging, or climbing could push past it. If that's true, it means the popular equation eat less, move more, lose weight isn't just an oversimplification. It might be measuring the wrong lever entirely, because the body is actively working against the move more side of that equation, quietly clawing back energy from other systems the moment activity crosses its threshold, rather than simply letting the total number climb. Here's modern connection number 3, and it might be the one that actually changes how you move tomorrow morning. If your body doesn't reward isolated, intense bursts of exercise with proportionally more total calorie burn, but it does seem to respond differently to consistent, spread-out, moderate movement across the entire day, then the entire architecture of the modern workday might be working against your biology in a way no gym membership can fix. Sitting in a chair for 10 straight hours and then making up for it with a 45-minute session isn't mimicking ancestral life. It's mimicking almost nothing that has ever existed in the 300,000-year history of the human body, until roughly the last 100 years. You've probably noticed this already, even if you never had language for it. The days you feel genuinely good, not gym sore, not runner's high euphoric, but simply quietly well, are rarely the days you crushed an intense workout. They're the days you walked somewhere instead of driving, stood instead of sat, carried groceries up 3 flights instead of taking the elevator, gardened for an hour, played with a kid on a floor. Nothing that would ever show up as an achievement on a fitness app, and yet your body seems to know the difference. And this is where the story takes its first genuinely uncomfortable turn, because if constant low-intensity movement is what the human energy system actually evolved to expect, and modern life has engineered that kind of movement almost entirely out of existence, then exercise, as an isolated, scheduled, gym-based activity, might not be a solution to the problem of modern sedentary life. It might be a symptom of it. A patch applied to a wound the patch was never designed to close. But that wasn't even the strangest part of what the data revealed. Because once researchers started asking not just how many calories the body burns, but where those saved calories go when physical activity plateaus expenditure instead of raising it, they found something that had been sitting quietly in the medical literature for years, misread, underreported, and almost entirely absent from the public conversation about fitness. What you're about to hear was buried under decades of fitness marketing, quietly contradicted by data nobody wanted to promote, because it doesn't sell gym memberships and it doesn't sell fitness trackers and it doesn't sell the idea that you can out-exercise a bad relationship with rest, stress, and food. Here it is. When your body's total energy expenditure plateaus despite rising activity, the energy that isn't being spent on extra calorie burn doesn't just vanish. Some of it gets rerouted into low-grade chronic inflammation, the same kind of inflammation now linked to heart disease, insulin resistance, and a growing list of conditions researchers didn't associate with metabolism a generation ago. In other words, the body isn't simply saving energy when it caps expenditure. In the wrong conditions, it can start spending that spared capacity on processes that quietly damage you over years, rather than processes that keep you healthy. Sit with that for a second because it inverts the entire cultural story. We were told more movement always equals better health. Full stop, no asterisk. But the constrained model suggests something closer to a threshold effect. Moderate, consistent activity keeps the body's systems, including inflammation regulation, running well within budget. Push activity too high without matching recovery, sleep, and fuel, and the very system meant to protect you starts running deficits elsewhere. Deficits that don't show up on a scale or a fitness app, but do show up years later in a blood work panel or a diagnosis. And here's the part that got quietly redrawn in translation from research paper to public advice. The original finding wasn't exercise is pointless. It was almost the opposite and far more interesting. Moderate, frequent, low to moderate intensity movement appears to be exactly what keeps total energy expenditure, immune function, and inflammation in the healthiest possible range. It's the extremes on both ends that seem to cause damage. Total sedentary stillness caps your body's systems too low. Chronic, high-intensity overexertion without adequate recovery pushes your body into a state of constant budget triage. The sweet spot isn't zero and it isn't maximum. It's something closer to what that man in the Rift Valley does every single day without ever naming it. Near constant, moderate, unglamorous motion. This is the piece almost never mentioned in gym advertisements because walk more, sit less, don't overtrain, sleep well, doesn't sell a 12-week transformation program. It doesn't fit on a billboard. It doesn't trend. But it's what the actual metabolic data, quietly published in journals most people will never open, keeps pointing toward again and again, population after population, continent after continent. And nobody, not even the researchers who first published these findings, fully expected how far this would reach beyond fitness and into something much bigger. The question of why modern chronic disease exploded so violently in the last century, in populations that, by conventional metrics, are exercising more than ever, tracking more than ever, and spending more money on health than any humans in history. Here's the final twist, and it's the one that should genuinely unsettle you. If the human body's energy budget is fixed and defended no matter how hard you push physical output, then the danger was never really a lack of exercise. The danger is what happens when you combine a body engineered for a strict, scarce, ever-uncertain calorie environment with a modern food supply engineered to be the exact opposite, unlimited, calorie-dense, and available at every hour of the day within arm's reach. That man in the Rift Valley isn't lean because he burns extraordinary amounts of energy through effort. He's lean because his intake and his environment match the ancient budget his body was built to expect. You, on the other hand, are asking a Stone Age budgeting system, one that caps how much it will ever let you burn no matter how hard you try, to survive inside a food environment engineered by billion-dollar companies to override every one of your evolved appetite signals. Your body isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it was built to do, protect a fixed budget inside a world it was never built to encounter. And no amount of 45-minute gym sessions can outdiscipline a mismatch that large, because the mismatch was never really about movement in the first place. It was about the flood of easy, engineered calories pouring in on the other side of a scale your body has no evolved defense against, while its defense against burning too much stayed exactly as strict as it was 300,000 years ago. This is the part that never makes it into the fitness industry's version of the story, because it's bad for business in every direction. It means you cannot outrun a bad diet no matter how many hours you log. It means the guilt-driven, punishment-style relationship so many people have with exercise, treating it as a tax paid for the crime of eating, is built on a broken model of how the body actually works. And it means the entire modern anxiety around not working out enough, the notifications, the streaks, the shame spirals when a week goes by without a formal session, might be aimed at exactly the wrong target. The body was never impressed by intensity. It was impressed by consistency, spread quietly across an entire lifetime, the way a man walking through dry grass at dawn has been doing, without a single day off and without a single day that felt like punishment, for longer than written history has existed to record it. And here's the detail that lingers longest, the one researchers mention almost in passing, as if it's too strange to dwell on. Populations living the ancestral, high-activity, hunter-gatherer lifestyle show remarkably low rates of the very chronic diseases now driving mortality across the industrialized world: heart disease, type 2 diabetes, certain cancers, despite burning roughly the same total daily calories as a sedentary American office worker. Same energy expenditure. Wildly different health outcomes. Which means the old, comforting equation, burn more, get healthier, was never really the mechanism at all. Something else was doing the protective work all along, something closer to the type of movement, the steadiness of it, the food environment surrounding it, and the near-total absence of prolonged, unbroken stillness, rather than the sheer number of calories torched in an hour at the gym, which leaves you standing in a strange, quiet place. Everything you were told about earning your food, punishing your body into shape, closing your rings, chasing a bigger calorie burn, none of it was exactly a lie, but almost all of it was aimed at the wrong lever, built on a model of the human body that was already outdated the moment the first fitness tracker shipped. The man walking through the grass at dawn was never training. He was simply living, inside a rhythm his body had spent hundreds of thousands of years learning to trust completely. So the next time your phone buzzes to remind you that you haven't closed your rings, or that you've missed your streak, or that today's workout is still waiting, remember what's actually sitting underneath that notification. A body still running on a 300,000-year-old operating system, one that was never designed to be punished into shape, only walked gently and relentlessly through an ordinary day. The gym isn't the enemy, but it was never the ancient secret either. The secret was smaller, quieter, and far harder to sell. Just get up and keep moving a little all day long, the way a man in tall grass at dawn has always done, long before anyone ever needed a word like workout to describe simply being alive.